How's she going? Waiting for the stream to catch up to us to make sure we're doing the right stuff and make sure everything is working out. So we'll just give it a few seconds and then we'll start her right up. We're not streaming on a link.
You're 15 seconds beyond.
Oh, I know. I can count to 15, strangely enough. So, we are doing YouTube Live today to celebrate 1 year of Brilliant Labs in Newfoundland and Labrador. This is our Brilliant Labs anniversary. We are a year old. So, I am John Barron. I am the provincial coordinator for Brilliant Labs, and I'm joined by
Melissa Lee. I'm a coding itinerant with the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District, working with Brilliant Labs.
And we are here for STEM to the Wind. And STEM to the Wind is our little bit of double entendre to talk about science, technology, education, and mathematics, and of course the Newfoundland Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador. I knew I was going to get that backwards from the beginning. But it is the Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador and the work they are doing with boat building here at Memorial University. But before we talk about that, we're going to talk a little bit about the stuff we've been doing in Newfoundland for the last year.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of positive things happening at schools around Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm one coding itinerant who's working to support teachers and students in our province. We also have Christine Elliott, who's working out of Cornerbrook to support teachers in the western area and as well as Labrador. So there's been lots of positive things happening with coding. We've been making a lot of school visits, a lot of traveling around, and teachers are doing some amazing things with their students. We still encourage teachers to get in touch with us if they want any more support in their schools. Just this morning, I was at Beachy Cove Elementary, and they were working on their Brilliant Labs Community of the Future, so they were really nice community built. Lots of positive things happening. They even incorporate a little bit of coding with the grade 3 and 4 students. So things are looking really bright in the province, and we're very hopeful for the future.
Absolutely. We are in about 100 schools in Newfoundland and Labrador right now. We have 17 maker spaces established, and we have 150 proposals as of today. And that's probably about $150,000 of materials in the hands of students and teachers across Newfoundland and Labrador. But that's enough about us, because we are here at the Technology Education Lab at Memorial University to talk to the people who are behind the boat building activity that's taking place behind us from the Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador. So I'm going to step off, and Melissa will take it over.
All right, so I'm going to invite our guests to come on over and join me. And I'll do a little introduction, and then we can ask a few questions to our guests about the project that they're working on here at Memorial University. So next to me we have Jim Dempsey, and Jim is the president of the Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. And then next to Jim we have Dr. Dave Gill. He's an associate professor for the Tech Ed program at MUN. And then next to Dr. Dave Gill we have Jerome Canning. And Jerome, you are the boat builder that's been working on the project behind us, right?
That's right. Thank you.
Perfect. So we really thank them for joining us today, and we were glad to get in and work with these great people that are working with the team on the project behind us here with the boat. So we'll get into a few questions, and then you can elaborate on the project that you've been planning and working and designing on and finishing up soon, I believe, right? Yeah. So, first question for Jim. So it seems that the interest in traditional boat building in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's been on the increase. Is this something that you see as being true, and what can we do to continue this type of interest and the growth of interest?
Well, at the museum, our mandate is to promote the heritage of the wooden boat. And of course, since Confederation, 70 years now today, the transportation has changed a lot in the province. It used to be that the boats that we built were the main transportation in the Bay areas. There was no highway, the only way to get around. So everybody was a boat builder. So if nothing else, that's a significant part of our past. And as the fishery evolved, through the latter part of the 20th century, now we're in the 21st century, materials changed, fishing methods changed, and so these traditional boats have kind of gone by the wayside. So like a lot of other places who have found themselves in this heritage conundrum, we are trying to preserve that heritage, not because we want to go back into the past, but we think it's something that defines who we are, and gone from an era where everybody knew how to build a boat to an era where nobody knows where to start.
Right.
So there are a number of people who are interested. Yes, there are new builds throughout the province. We like to think that we're on top of that and that we're a major influence in making people interested. And so in this building this boat here, we have about 20 people who are involved in 2 different sessions who are actually building a boat and can walk away proudly and say, I did that.
Right. So with a project like this and the amount of people that are involved in it, obviously you think it's really important to preserve the traditional Newfoundland and Labrador building knowledge and the skills, and you want to keep that growing on, I assume, for the generations to come as well.
That's correct. This is the 21st century, so, excuse me, we're building a traditional boat, but we're using contemporary methods.
Right.
Okay? Now, we can no longer have the time to go out and harvest our own timber, so we go to a lumber yard.
Right.
There are all kinds of new adhesives and epoxies and stainless steel screws and things like that. In the interest of building an old boat better, we're not afraid to do that. But the skills, the shape, the eye that's necessary to make sure the boat is fair hasn't changed a bit.
Right. So you're having the traditional skills, but connecting it with the modern technology that we have available to us, of course.
Yeah, and to be fair, in the old days, the old boats were hard used and were basically consumable. Boats were built every 2-3 years. This one will last 20 years.
Right. So you mentioned the mandates of the Wooden Boat Museum, and then how do those mandates connect with Mud Education? How are they aligned to come up with this project as partnership?
Yeah, so the Wooden Boat Museum has an educational mandate, and obviously MUN has an educational mandate as well. But specifically here in the Technology Education Diploma Program, I have a group of 20 students that go through every year, and when they're finished, they will be certified tech ed teachers. So they will have an opportunity to teach everything, from robotics and coding to residential construction and anything that you would think of in a broad kind of spectrum of technology, or things that we make our lives better, and and the systems and how they interact and things like that. So where the museum has an educational mandate, and I have students and space that relate to that, there's a really good meshing there of both of our goals and objectives. And with my interns out, like most of my students are out during the winter, we have the space. So it really was just a good connection, right? And a good way that 2 organizations with similar interests could move forward together.
Right, and from the teacher perspective, I definitely see it's very cross-curricular. Of course, you have the tech ed piece in there, but you're getting back into the culture and the traditional skills that you're meeting upon as well.
Absolutely, very cross-curricular.
For sure. So I guess you mentioned some of the benefits of the partnership. So is this something you're hoping to kind of continue on with in the future, or there's what have you seen in terms of benefits while having the students here?
I think there's a number of different benefits, and I do hope it does go into the future, because every year we tweak things, we make things better, we open it up to more people. So this year, in the first 2 years, we had it open up to the general public, and some of my tech ed students came and volunteered their time. This year, we've actually opened up a 3-credit course for MUN students in the day. So now, I mean, generally the demographic of the general public workshop is older.
Right.
Whereas if we can continue this 3-credit course, then we can get a younger demographic, and then that helps. That not only helps continue those traditional skills and the culture and things like that, but from a faculty of education perspective, it allows me to really showcase what we do here.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we're always looking for interested people who want to be teachers.
Yes, for sure. And it makes it a very passionate type of project that leads back into that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So Jerome, can you tell us a little bit more about the project that you've been working on here behind us, the punt, and what's been going on during the building of the project with your students that have been in your course?
Sure. Well, it's a punt. Sometimes it's referred to as a rodney. So what you're looking at here as a wooden boat is a round bilge boat, 16 feet long. The project as DeMarcus French Rodney or DeMarcus French punt.
Right.
So that punt was possibly its lines, its origin may have went back to England. So it has a long history. And what happened is Dr. David Taylor recorded this boat in 1978-79. When I say record, that means that he did interviews, measurements, lots of conversations, lots about how to build, how they got to wood, all of that kind of thing. And we inherited that from his master's thesis.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is actually replicate that. This is our signature boat, and what we're doing is keeping true to what he did. Other than what Jim was talking about, we apply modern techniques. We have laminated frames versus going into woods and cutting timbers.
Yeah.
But we're still open to doing that. It's just that that's a little bit more difficult, and this appeals to the general public because they too can replicate what we do, which makes it easier for them.
Right. So I guess that kind of answered a question for me. The fact that it originated in Winterton, I'm assuming that's why the Wooden Boat Museum is based in Winterton.
David Taylor was a real, he could see in the future, and he saw that a town like Winterton was a boat building center, and so that's why he did his master's thesis there.
Right.
And he pointed out to the local heritage people that we really had something here. So we have carried on that tradition, and this is.
The Winterton people who remember David Taylor as young men and young women now say, look at that wave. Our boat is at none.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
it's marvelous. It's quite a circle.
Yes.
And now it's going back to some of the young people who are also now who don't know these things.
Yeah.
We're learning about boat building, not from their dads, as the tradition was, but through that circle of education and emphasis on technology and heritage and history. And they're learning it here at Mount.
Right, that's fantastic. So we spoke a little bit about what a punt actually is. Can you talk a little bit about the different types of Newfoundland and Labrador traditional boats besides the punt?
As I said earlier, this is round bilge, which means that she is round, and has a keel. So the other boat of that size, 16, 17, 18-foot boat, they're both fishing boats, is the punt, is also the dory, which is a flat bottom boat. Our first year here, we actually built a Grand Bank dory. So that's the other boat of that size. But when you look at this one, the round bilge punt, you'll start to see it go a little larger and has inboard motors, and they will be referred to as a motorboat.
Right.
But it has this general punt shape, except larger. Then as you get, and there's a different fishery, you can go further off. This was a sail and oar, so closer to the port that it was operated from. Then when you had the inboard motor, you could go a little further. You can also take more gear, catch more fish. We have trap skiff, which is very famous boat in Newfoundland. That's a larger boat carrying a
It's interesting to see how much has changed with technology, but also that it's important to keep some of those traditional ways at the front of our minds. So this is a question a little bit more for everyone, because you all represent kind of different organizations. So Brilliant Labs, of course, is dedicated to promoting maker education in the province and also in Atlantic Canada as a whole. So what opportunities can you envision when organizations like your organizations, how can they work together with organizations like Brilliant Labs?
I think the big thing with partnerships and organizations, and anybody can jump in here, is to find that that common goal or that common mandate.
Right.
And when they can align, then you can do a lot more than you can do by yourself. And maybe Jim can talk a little bit about some of the other things that the museum has done.
Certainly, yeah.
To promote those kind of things.
Well, we're a not-for-profit organization, and so money is always an issue. and we have more ideas than cash.
Mhm.
So we've taken partnership to heart and realized that if we're going to go anywhere outside of our narrow exhibition at the museum in Winterton, we need to have friends. So this partnership is a great example of how we each can achieve our goals. And our goals here are to spread the good word, train more people in wooden boat building, and MUN gives us access to the St. John's metro area. So there are a lot of people here that aren't going to be driving back and forth to Winterton every night to do this. So that's an opportunity in itself. Other partnerships we have with heritage organizations, we have actual memorandum of understanding with the Tullingate Isles fishing vessels and the Trinity Heritage Society. We have worked with Thrive, a
Yep.
youth group. And so we're always looking for opportunities like this.
Right.
And we find that we get a lot more coverage, and it's amazing the feedback we get from people on the street.
And
Sure.
this webcast itself and what we're going to demonstrate here is another good example where our the education committee of the museum has been tasked over the last year with, they've been thinking about it for a while, but the idea of digitizing their collection or their data of different boats and shapes and things like that. So when Brilliant Labs came to me about a possible project together, I said, well, if you need a boat haul, we might have 2 or 3 that you could use. So over the last year, through working with some people in the Faculty of Engineering, a work term student, Liam Harnham, and some other volunteers at the museum, we've actually been able to digitize and produce 3D printer files,
Right.
files that can be printed. And that's just another way to preserve and move, those cultural things forward. So, yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're doing good, buddy. No, I mean, really, you guys really represent the essence of what we're all about, including our present partners and partners to come, is reaching out to younger generation. That's the key. No matter how we cut it, those are the people that will lead our society in years to come. And because they're going to lead, we can't let them forget who came before us.
Yep.
So our job is, we're entered between. I have a lot of experience in the wooden boat, but there's other people, I'm sure you do lots of wonderful interviews about farming and whatever. I mean, we can't let them forget that their heritage is what makes them. So essentially, this is a great thing that's happening here today. I can guarantee we want to see more of it as you do.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, maker education as a whole is huge as to what it can be in terms of sewing or farming or boat making, right? There's so many connections in terms of education that you can make from K to 12 and up through university and trades, and there's a lot of connections there, and I think it goes back to that key piece of having those common goals and your purpose, right?
And we have children's workshops in Winterton
Oh,
River,
really?
and they're incredibly popular. And what you see is always very surprising, but really not that surprising. They actually have a lot of fun.
I imagine, I've seen a lot with
Yep,
maker
yep,
education
yep.
in schools, so I can imagine
Yep.
that's a great opportunity.
And they
that-
come back.
Yeah, absolutely, and they might not give, it's opportunities that that might not have thought possible before, so it's great to be offering that to them. Fantastic. So we just have one more question to end off and kind of lead on to what we're going to be, what Wiley's going to be speaking about with 3D printing and how this kind of fits in all together. So can you explain how you kind of go from your full-scale model that we have here behind us to a 3D printable model of a punt, and what's kind of the process that you have to take there?
Well, we can tell you what we did here.
Sure.
The original lines were taken by David Taylor in 1979. And naval architect or Jerome's done this several times, is to expand that collection of three-dimensional points so that it better defines the shape of the boat. In doing that, the person who's doing the lines is actually what we call fairing each each line,
Mhm.
so that there's no points that are out of place.
Mhm.
From that comes a lines plan, which looks something like this. It's a small scale.
Right.
From the lines plan, we then go to the loft boards and we create a 3D, or sorry, a full-scale plan for the boat. All the lines are there. As you can see up in the corner, they're all sectional lines, which give the cross sections of the boat. So from that, we've built the boat. As David said, we had a engineering student precisely measure the boat again as it was being built. And he had lots of time and a very good working position so that he could take good measurements.
Mhm.
He put them into the three-dimensional model and fixed that model that now has created the three-dimensional printer model you'll see here in a minute.
Yeah, so basically going backwards from, instead of going to the lock boards,
Yeah.
it's working into the software. There's a number of different types of software. I mean, you can do it with any number of different types. Like Dempsey is one, and you can do stuff in SketchUp and SolidWorks, and there's tons of, it's just CAD software basically. And there's a lot of math involved.
Yep.
Which is really good, but it's not hard math.
Right.
It's really, when you think about it.
It's your hands-on, real life kind
Yeah,
of.
absolutely. And then it's basically plotting those points into the software. And because, like Jim said, because the measurements, you're measuring by hand and eye,
Right.
sometimes there are points that are off.
Yep.
And when you generate the boat, then the side of the boat can look like this sometimes. So then somebody with experience like Jerome will go in and, figure those lines in the software.
Right.
And then once we have that in the software, well, I mean, it's a digital file. You can do almost anything you want with it, right?
Right.
So you can print it or share it or, whatever.
And we probably have, and I wouldn't let go on a limb with this, this boat here has all the history of the science of naval architecture.
Mhm.
It goes from the probably 1600s to a method that it became a science. Naval architecture started becoming a science. And this is the load, which you can see on Jim's shirt there. This is a three-piece mold. And the three-piece mold, that was kept in the family. They were actually, those three pieces that you see right here on Jim's, they're three pieces of wood.
Mhm.
They were brought over with a string to Winterton.
Right.
Probably 17 or early 1800s.
Yeah.
And that family continued to make that boat from those three pieces of wood until it came to 1979 with Daytail, which took another jump. And then with our museum and our partners at the Faculty of Education, it took another jump, and now it's all digitized and
Right, and that knowledge is being shared, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
And now now we can, the museum can share that with other organizations
Yeah.
to do all kinds of projects that probably no one ever thought of back when they took those sticks across.
he's leaving Newfoundland again now.
And
Going
that's,
by the digital waters,
right, and that's, Wiley's gonna speak to us next about how, the actual 3D printed model and, how we kind of incorporated microwave with it. But before we throw over to him, I'd just like to thank you so much for answering some of our questions this morning. So again, we have, Jim, and we have Dave and Jerome, and they joined us this morning to speak about their project. So we'll toss it over to Wiley now. Thanks again.
Thank you.
So we finally got our model, and we're going to try to do something that you might want to fit in the classroom situation. And the model we have is the actual model of the punt that you see behind us. And now it's been replicated, and I'm going to put up some pictures here I want to show you. Move the other camera around, would you?
Yeah.
Just to
There's audio on that camera, there's no audio on the slideshow.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. All right, so let's take a look further at the boat. What I've got down here. It was printed on our rather inexpensive printer. We printed it in two pieces and joined it together. So we scaled it up 200% from what we did, and now I've put it together hopefully in a way that's going to work in the water when I put it here. So it makes it look a little bit complicated when you look inside the boat, but it's actually quite simple. We have one battery pack that's powering a microbit. We have a second battery pack that's powering a relay. The relay is turning on the motor, which is powered by another one. If you had a larger power supply, you wouldn't need the three. So let's take a quick look at the code and look at the screen just for a second, because we have some audio issues on that screen. Okay. So this is the code that you see in front of you here is for the boat itself. I'm going to get John to switch back to the other one just for a minute. Okay. This particular one, when the microbit in the boat receives a number, we decide what we're going to do with that number. And in this case, what we're doing is we're turning on a pin that will actually be used to trigger the relay. If we don't get a 1, we get a 0, we're going to turn the pin off, which effectively turns off the relay and turns off the motor. So let's move in to actually trying it out. Okay. You got the first one there now? I'm sorry. This is the code for the microbit that's going to be held in your hand. And this one on tilt left, we're going to turn the motor off. On tilt right, we're going to turn the motor on. So you can see the code. The code will be available later as well. So rather than spend too much time discussing the code, let's take a look at getting this thing to work. All right. So I'm going to turn it on here, and I might have to lay it down just for a minute. All right, I'm going to turn towards the camera here, and you can see I have the microbit. I have the function put on tilt. So when I tilt the microbit, the electric motor is going to turn on. When I tilt it the other way, it's going to turn off. And if it floats, it should go up our little lake we have here. Who knows? I'll do it one more time, at least. There we go. Well, John, I think we flew up. The relay itself was I had some issues with trying to power the motor off the microbit because there's a low voltage off the microbit. So the easiest way to do that was to power the motor separately and to have the microbit turn on a relay, which in effect turns on the engine. All right.
All right, and we're shifted. It's okay, we can figure this out. We're at the university. I used to teach here once upon a time. So that's our show for today. That's our YouTube Live. Big thanks to the Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador and Jerome and everybody else and Memorial University and the Tech Ed faculty and for hosting us here today. It's been a great afternoon. Things worked out pretty good. We had a few little audio things just to remember for next time, but every time we do a YouTube Live, things get a little bit better. So sometime 10 years from now, it'll be perfect. Yes. So that is a wrap. So that's a good afternoon from me.
And it's a good afternoon from him.